Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com, a Paramount Sports podcast. I am Mike Casaza. Going to the bullpen, calling in Chris Anderson for an emergency baseball podcast here. Chris, the morning of July 17th, we have another coaching change at West Virginia. The morning of July 17th, we have the resolution of a coaching change at West Virginia. I love it. Just that it's tidy. I hate to say it because Randy Mazey announcing plans to resign, not immediately. And then longtime assistant coach Steve Sabins will take over. And that's it. No drama, no coaching searches, no hot boards, nothing. A long runway into retirement and a pretty tidy succession plan. Do I just press publish now, or should we talk about this? Because this seems like it is finished, but also it seems like it is worth discussing for many reasons.
I just want to clarify something, Mike, before we wrap this up and hit publish. Are you saying that Randy Mazey is resigning with the intent to retire, or too soon for that term to be utilized again?
Let me get with my attorneys, multiple attorneys, but I would say retiring with the intent to retire. How's that?
That sounds good.
But back to the point. Tidy, likely successful, although we at West Virginia know to treat head coaching waitings with a bit of skepticism. This seems different, though.
It does seem different, and I think it seems different because it's organized, it's planned. It seems like there's a point to it, there's a reason to it. They like this succession plan. I'll get back to the Randy Mazey retiring part, but the Steve Sabins, succession plan. I think some people might look at it and go, "Oh, first time head coach." You know, is that something West Virginia at this point, whatever you want to say that West Virginia is as a program, are they a top 25-ish type program? I think they built that. I think they deserve that discussion. And should a top 25-ish program be hiring a first time head coach? Have that question, that's fine. I understand that discussion, but I think Sabins has earned this by what he's done at West Virginia, coming and joining as an assistant coach back in 2016, taking up the recruiting mantle role like the coordinator. And it's different with baseball. I'm going to say, I think it's like more difficult just because of how the scholarships work and how you split them up and how you have to balance egos and the draft and everything else that comes with it. And he has very successfully handled that. So I think he has that kind of manager mode in him, those type of attributes in him that he can handle being a head coach. And so I think this is a good thing for him to just have a couple years to maybe learn a couple more of the nuances of being the head man before he takes over. So I'm a big fan of the succession plan, even if it is a first time head coach.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who maybe have not followed baseball closely, but are West Virginia sports fans might go, oh, man, can't you go out and take this top 25 program on the market and see what happens? And I think some people who are close to the program would say, sure, but you're not going to find a better fit than this. And I get that. I get both sides. I can get the conviction that a guy like Steve Sabins is indeed the person who has been groomed for this for a number of years. And also, we can go over his background in a bit. Seems like a good fit. But also, like, I can see fans being like, man, I wonder who you could hire here to do something like this. And then the other part about this is, does this indicate any type of pattern for Rem Baker, Josh Eilert, Steve Sabins? I'm not going to fill in the blank here, but like football may have a coaching search, and then are people going to say, oh, they're just going to promote from within? It's totally different. This is a unique situation. As you said, baseball's different, and sometimes familiarity is a great asset to have, and this seemed like one of those situations here. Let's go to Mazey. Surprising you, Chris? This is a guy who just won the Big 12 for the first time in school history, been here for quite some time now, has taken this program from Holly Field to record attendance levels at Mon County Ballpark. Seems like he's got this thing pointing in the right direction. They've been successful recently and then more consistently successful in the past few years, but he's also willing to say, I'm ready to gear down and soon detour into a different part of my life.
I was shocked at first. I think just because part of me is with that feeling of when you have recent success, it's like, hey, you still got it. Why would you step away when you still got it? Um, but then the longer I thought about it, one, and I hope he is listening to this, but I hope he doesn't take this the wrong way. I didn't realize how old Randy Mazey was. Like, I mean, he's not old, like not, but I feel like coaching wise, he's been around a long time. He has been coaching since 1990. He was first the head coach back in 1994. I mean, when he was getting his coaching started at Clemson, like, Nolan Ryan was like the best pitcher in, leading the league in strikeouts. George Brett was the best hitter. Like that. That's how long ago we're talking. There's probably people listening to this podcast right now who never even saw those guys play. Um, and Randy Mazey started coaching then 33 years ago. So while I don't think 57, I believe he's 57, 58, somewhere around there is like too terribly old, he'll get to 60 and guess and retire, nice round number. Um, but the idea of coaching for 35 years by that point, that's a long time to be doing anything. So it makes a little more sense with that when I look at it through that lens.
So if he was born in 66 and his first head coaching spot was in 1994, he's like 27 his first year. He's born in May of 66. So a 27-year-old head coach. Is that right?
That's wild.
That's crazy when you think about it. And he's been coached for a long, long time too. And again, those are tough seasons. And we can get over his career too. Let's go over this. He's been the head coach now since 2013. 3 regional appearances this past season, historic in so many ways. Master school record with 40 wins, highest ranking ever. Great season. 320, 241, 57% of the wins. And I don't want to bring up a bad part of his career, but he was the head coach at East Carolina and was very, very successful there. 3 seasons there, 120, 66, and won the tie. Great. But made 3 regionals in 3 years. And then he was gone, suspended, resigned. And then he's at TCU from 2006 to 2012. And you wonder, why is this guy who was like this young hotshot coach at Charleston Southern, key assistant, Georgia, East Carolina, Tennessee, gets another head coaching gig at East Carolina, which is very different than when he's younger at Charleston Southern. East Carolina's big-time baseball. Does really well there. Whatever happens, happens. And he's gone for a long time. And then he's back at West Virginia doing what he probably was supposed to be doing all along, molding pitchers, building a program, winning a lot of games for a place that maybe shouldn't win as much or win as often. And he has a great run here. And again, he'll have a couple more seasons to extend this run. It's not over. But I just like the fact that he got that other chance to tell the story, to finish the story. And then the details of what happened in East Carolina vary depending on who you talk to. A lot of people say, listen, I can tell you this. I went to TCU when West Virginia hired Randy Mazey, and I was covering a basketball game or a football game. I can't remember. But it was before the first season with Mazey. And I talked to a lot of the TCU staff, and they all said he got a bad deal there. It wasn't his fault at ECU. Things could have been better. Maybe he could have done things better, but not a career-altering, tenure-snapping incident there that makes him untouchable, unhireable again. And everybody was really happy and really optimistic for him and for West Virginia, which always made me think like, okay, this guy probably has it all together, and watch out, because he's been planning and waiting in the Big 12 for so long, and he might be really good right away here. And indeed he was. The first couple of years, I think they were maybe 6 or 7 games above 500 and then pretty even, and then took off after that and got to be pretty good. So the fact that he was able to get back on track in his career and then put together, I mean, kind of hard to think about this now, but a guy who played at Clemson and who was a head coach and then an assistant at East Carolina, an assistant, at other places I mentioned, he's probably going to be recognized as the West Virginia baseball coach in his career. Not a guy who ended up at West Virginia or who spent some time at West Virginia. He's going to be the West Virginia baseball coach whenever it's done for him. I think when it's done, it's actually done. But just as a storyteller, I think it's good that he got that second chance and really did make the most of it too.
Yeah, I'm with you. We talk about with baseball. When you go into the Hall of Fame, they ask you for guys who played on multiple teams or had long stints with multiple teams. What's your hat? What's the hat going to be? I brought up Nolan Ryan. He played for the Angels, he played for the Rangers, he played for the Mets, and it's like, hey, what's your hat going to be? And some guys will pick a team, their spot. Some guys will, just do the regular Major League Baseball hat to not, I don't know, piss off somebody, I guess. But you're right. When it comes to Randy Mazey, despite his history everywhere else, like I mean, East Carolina, he took them within like a couple runs of going to the College World Series and won 51 games in a season. He turned that Charleston Southern program around from, I mean, they were terrible when he took over, and he had them in the NCAA regionals in his final year. And he's done just as amazing things at West Virginia. And I'm with you. His hat, in this fictitious Hall of Fame here for coaches in college baseball, his hat would have a big flying WV on it, because I think that's where he's had the biggest impact and the longest impact for sure.
One more on him, then we get to Saban to wrap this up. But what do you put in that Hall of Fame bio as him for legacy stuff? And I don't want to say, top 10 wins or season win totals or NCAA appearances. That's statistical stuff. I don't know if there's anecdotal things or stories or just allure of the program, appeal of the program. And I'll just give you one. When they played his first season, that was their last season at Hollyfield. Big 12 is now part of their life. They have Texas in town. It's a good Texas team. And one of the Clemens' kids is pitching for Texas, playing for Texas. He might have had two. I can't remember. But I know specifically that Roger Clemens was there at Hollyfield, sitting on a bleacher, eating a hot dog. Roger Clemens, bleachers, watching his kids play college baseball for the University of Texas, right? Because West Virginia had a American Legion kind of field, right? Fast forward, and they're selling, record attendance for midweek games on like rainy, snowy days, right? It's crazy that it happened really that quickly. When you look at how long the baseball has been around here, and then, I'm talking like a decade plus now, but still to go from just the visual of a Hall of Fame coach eating a hot dog, or excuse me, a Hall of Fame player eating a hot dog. Is Clemens in the Hall of Fame? He's not, is he?
I don't think they voted him in yet.
Okay. A well-known Hall of Fame level pitcher. How about this? Roger Clemens is eating a hot dog, right? And all of a sudden you got like nearly 4,000 people on a midweek game in a really picturesque pro baseball level stadium. I'm not saying Randy Mazey did all the lifting there and poured the concrete, but Randy Mazey did a lot of the heavy lifting and poured a lot of the proverbial concrete to make that happen. And didn't build the stadium, but he certainly made people come there and watch the team and really like it and grow a following. And then again, off the field, the stuff he did, these stories will come out, I'm sure, but really in the community, obviously people are very aware of his family, the story of the son, the role his wife plays at the university. They have, like alumni and fans of their house for functions. They had an NIL like weekly hangout at a bar in Morgantown, just small grassroots stuff that really went a long way for the program, but also him, his family, and the role that the team and the staff play in the community. And that's stuff that I wish that people knew more about and fortunately do get to know about and now celebrate for a little bit longer while he's still the head coach.
I'm with you 100%, because I think, a lot of times when you think about the coaches, you think about the wins, and he's got that. I'm trying to double, triple check this on the East Carolina side as we're talking here, but I'm fairly certain with that 51 win season at East Carolina, Randy Mazey holds the record at three different schools for the best win or win loss record in some form at three different schools. Because Charleston Southern in '96 going 30-24-1, that was their best year ever, according to the numbers I'm looking at on their website. You noted West Virginia going 40-20. That 40 wins tied for the most in school history. And I'm pretty sure that East Carolina 51 win team is way, way up there if it's not the top. And if you could do that at three different schools, you're not a product of the school or the system or the recruiting. You are a good coach, period. And so you have that. But I'm with you. I think people in Morgantown should remember him more for literally building a program. Obviously, West Virginia had a baseball team for a long time, and they had occasionally some good years, but he turned it in from just this, not even like a tertiary sport, but just like a fringe team around campus to a legitimate program that fans and people were excited about.
Third sport on campus, and that's why he was here. That's why they invested in baseball. And again, told the story before. I shared this story again, but 2010 or 11, I can't remember exactly when. So good for me telling the story. I can't even remember the details. But Oliver Luck, Kelly Zinn, I'm trying to think of who else is there. Scott Jerko, excuse me, Jed Jerko, um, just former major league players that were at West Virginia, some major league people from the Diamondbacks that Ken Kendrick put together. They had a huge huge think tank on campus and said, how do we get baseball right? But also, do we continue playing baseball? And they had a discussion about whether or not they would continue playing baseball at West Virginia. They chose to continue, obviously, and part of the option was, okay, how do you do it? First thing they said was get a coach. And then it wasn't long that after that Oliver Luck had his eyes on Randy Mazey, and here we are. So many years later saying, wow, what a confluence of events that turned out to be, because talk him into playing baseball and then walk away saying you got to have the manager, and they found the manager too. Randy Mazey, 3-time All ACC player. Let's go to another good college player. No offense, Steve Saban's probably not quite the player that Randy Mazey was, but Steve Saban's new coach, manager, I guess you would call it, has the distinction of playing at 4 colleges: Angelina State, Daytona State, Oklahoma State, and then Embry-Riddle. He was the conference player of the year at Embry-Riddle. From Austin, Texas, played at Oklahoma State, coach at Oklahoma State, and then, interestingly, Chris came to West Virginia from Oklahoma State, where he was, air quotes here, just a volunteer assistant, but he's been at West Virginia since 2016, so he was not part of the original Randy Mazey staff, but he's certainly adjusted, acclimated, and impressed. Last 2 years, associate head coach. Last 5 years, I believe, recruiting coordinator. A lot of the offense, a lot of the recruiting success goes to him. Again, if they went out and they farmed this, could they find a bigger name? Probably. Could they find a better fit? I don't know about that. And ultimately, the Mountaineers kind of agreed that shouldn't be a tricky transition for him at all.
Yeah, I'm with you on the. I like the air quotes for volunteer assistant because you and I both know that in all sports, one, those guys do a lot of work, and two, like some of them do even more work than others, and are leaned on more than others, depending on the program, depending on the situation, and depending on how much the coach trusts them. And yeah, obviously, right before that, he was the player development coordinator, so he's been put in charge of a lot of important stuff at 2 very good Big 12 programs. So and even before this, he was the chosen one, so to speak, to be the associate head coach, the guy that, if something were to have happened to Mazey or he would have had to have missed games, like Saban's is the guy that they would have turned to for like an interim tag or something, for a couple games. So he is the guy that has been kind of the chosen one for the last few years to kind of be this guy. And eventually, apparently, we're going to get there.
Yeah. The recruiting success is really hard to overlook. You're going to have to recruit uniquely here to do it. And I think the fact that he was here and as you mentioned, different capacities to come in from the wind and then to figure out how to recruit here, not just aim at stars, which he's able to do, but also people who were from the region who are interested in playing in the climate. Never mind the Big 12. That's a skill. And he picked that up pretty quickly, and they've recruited very well. Top 40 classes at West Virginia for baseball. That's nothing to sneeze at. And they've done that pretty consistently. And they've produced pros. They've produced all conference players. They've got a pretty good NIL apparatus, obviously, too. So that's been effective. He's got a great foundation to work with, a lot of stuff that came because he was here. The footsteps that Randy Mazey put in front of him, pretty good to follow. Seem like they're strong foundation for him right now. Finally, Chris, so I guess let's just talk about succession in general. Do these things work? And then can they be uniformly trusted or disliked? It seems to me it's always going to be the ingredients, which in this case is the manager and the incumbent, but it could go wrong, I guess. It could work out perfectly as well. Who knows what happens? Long time still. The idea is going to work. I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion about this. Saban's was, mentioned a couple times this offseason, past off seasons for head coaching positions. I think Penn State, he was listed as a candidate by Baseball America. Tend to believe them. So here's a guy who could be somewhere else, is here, or could have pursued opportunity somewhere else, is here. I don't think ambition's his problem. He wants to do this. I don't think Randy Mazey giving himself a runway is going to talk himself out of this sometime soon, but who knows? But Is it for a long time we closed the book on coaching transitions and coaching and waitings because we saw the worst possible thing happen here. You don't really see that anymore, like at Wisconsin or Oregon or West Virginia in football, but they're going to give this a shot here. I don't know if it saves the practice in sports in general, but it doesn't seem like a bad idea. Is it just one of those time and a place things, or is this a bad idea that you cross your fingers about, or am I off base even asking about this?
I don't think you're off base. As you know, I was going to say, we've seen this before. We've seen how it can go bad. We've seen how it can go bad with an older head coach ready to or going to step down, not ready to step down in the other case, but and a young hotshot assistant who has been linked to a lot of other jobs and has never been a head coach. So there's some similarities. There's some parallels there. The big difference here, I think, in my mind, is that previous pairing. Obviously, we're talking about Bill Stewart and Dana Holgerson here, was kind of forced upon each other. That was not Bill Stewart didn't want to retire, and he was forced to take on Holgerson, and it's different. Like this is a pairing that they wanted to be together. This is a pairing that I'm assuming that Mazey talked to Sabins about beforehand and said, "Hey, I'm getting close. Here's my idea. Are you interested?" Which makes this a wildly different situation than that.
So there's your story now. On a Monday, West Virginia concludes a baseball coaching search, also replaces its coach, but manages to keep its coach. That's pretty cool, right? Not a functional story like this that often happens in coaching changes, never mind at West Virginia. So enjoy it while you can. Participate in the Randy Mazey celebration. Check back for more as we find out additional details at earsports.com. Until then, I am Mike Casazza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you next time.